Hi, I'm John Stevens.
This is Matt Russell.
And this is Pod Have Mercy.
This is Pod Have Mercy.
Yeah, so are we starting?
We're rolling.
We are.
We are.
Yeah, so Matt, how are you doing?
You know, John.
Just because, I really do want to know.
You know, I'm okay. I'm okay.
Because today we don't have a guest, so it's just going to be me and you.
Wow.
There's some things we need to talk about.
Okay. This is we're going old school, aren't we?
Yeah, like back to the beginning.
We went for a while without a guest, and then COVID came, and we thought, wow, we should probably talk to experts about some things.
Because we don't know what we're talking about. So Jeff sent us some questions. Didn't you, Jeff?
I did.
Didn't you, Jeff?
I surely did.
So these are what are these questions called? You made these up, or is this like some...
It's a game called We're Not Really Strangers.
Oh, We're Not Really Strangers. We started playing this back when the podcast was going to be this cute little...
cute little pithy thing.
Innocuous conversation every week.
Innocuous conversation. Yeah. Those were the days. Or the weeks, actually.
3 of them.
So, you have 2 questions?
I just have one.
Oh, wow.
I gave you 2. You can take
You know why he gave me 2? Because he used to give me the questions like, why do I get the hard question? You always give me the hard question.
I need to give you some options.
All right. So what's your question?
Okay. If you'll answer this. Well, it's not even... Okay. If you were to buy me a present knowing nothing about me other than what I look like, what would it be?
If I were to buy Matt Russell a present, knowing nothing about you other than what you look like, it would probably be like a man groomer. Like one of these man grooming kits. It would be like, it'd have the little nose hair trimmer.
Because I need it.
And the little, yeah, it'd be the man grooming kit. It'd be like
need it. Okay, thank you.
It would probably have some really cool smelling balm and aftershave and that. Don't you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Man grooming.
So you're saying I need some manscaping?
Man sculpting. No, I'm not saying you need any manscaping. I'm just saying it looks like you manage that pretty well on a regular basis.
You
don't need manscaping. Man grooming, is that what it's called? You are. You're just such a good-looking guy, so GQ-ish and just, just put together.
Okay, next question.
Really is. It's just awesome. All right, do you want the serious question or the fun question?
I don't care. Do I?
No, you get to pick. I got 2, so you get to pick.
Let's do fun.
Fun. All right, so do you think plants would thrive or die in my care? And please explain.
Thrive or die? I think, well, they'd die. They would,
and explain.
It's gonna be the Auschwitz of plants in your care, I think.
And
I think this is where plants go to die. Because you know why? Because I think you've got other things to worry about, John, besides plants. And I think that you probably water enough people and places and things in your life.
See, he's pulling himself out of
this. That's a no.
Leads into the next question too, in a way.
But that's a true.
Oh, my other question.
I'm not saying because you don't care about plants. I'm thinking, you care about a lot of other things.
So the other question that I had that was a serious one. He gave me. It says, "What do you think the hardest part of what I do for a living? What do you think the hardest part of what I do for a living?" Doesn't really make sense as a question, but I think you get the gist of it.
I understand that, yeah. Well, you and I talked about this, I think, last week, where I was deeply grateful. The more I get to know you, I see that you are uniquely gifted to be not just a senior pastor, but the senior pastor of this church in this time. And your gifts that you have, the way that you hold things, the way that you're still growing, I just think, and so I think that the hardest thing that I look at from my vantage point would be the amount of things that you have to hold and continue to move forward in a paced way while always being able to pivot.
This is why I'm struggling with apathy. The answer to that question.
Right? I mean, so I think that you're holding 1,000 things and 1,000 projects that none of them you may be able to see to fruition because you're handing them to other people and trusting other people with them. But then when the stuff hits a fan, you have to be able to pivot and do that with kind of like an emotional awareness and spiritual depth, and you know what I mean? And so I think that if I were you, I would be shouting into my pillow a lot and possibly.
This makes me sound like better than I really am. But what makes you think I don't shout in my pillow?
You might. Because I know I still do, but, you know.
One of the things I thought would be, I don't know, helpful or good, it seems like there's a lot of, I don't know, I feel, it feels weighty, like there's just a fog in life.
Yeah.
Maybe other people don't feel it. It's just, whatever you normally deal with, it's like now, everything is turned up. The squelch knob, is turned up more.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about all the things that we've lost. I think I sent you an article earlier.
Yes.
It's like, so the things that we don't have access to anymore. And one is buffets.
Yeah, this is like things that are going away and may not come back kind of thing, right?
And well, maybe they don't need to come back. How are you in buffets?
As long as I'm in front of a good one, I'm pretty good. I mean, I'm not a big buffet though, dude, because that's just.
Because you eat quinoa.
There's not a lot of variation of quinoa at a buffet. But I remember being a kid going to Luby's after church and being in that big old long line. And I think the average age of a buffet participant is either about 150. At least that's what I felt like as a kid. Right. Or you've got to be in West Texas in front of a steak and bacon buffet.
That's right.
And then it's just a lot of different body types there.
Turf and turf.
Yeah, surf and turf. More turf than surf. Turf and turf.
So are all buffets basically closed? There's no buffets like where you can serve yourself.
I don't think so.
So like salad bars.
Sweet tomatoes. That's one of my go-to.
It's gone.
Gone. Like the Rapture. It was yanked.
That was my favorite part of the Golden Corral experience. I haven't been to Golden Corral in a while, but the salad bar.
Oh, salad bars. Yeah.
And have you been to a Fogo de Chao?
Not in a while.
Yeah.
But yes.
The salad bars, but I don't think you can do salad bars anymore. Continental breakfasts when you stay at a hotel.
Mm-hmm. Gone.
That's probably not a bad thing. And now, don't you remember when you used to go to like a Fuddruckers or
yes,
you had like the condiment station?
Gone.
That's gone too, right?
Just they're taking everything that means anything.
So I'm thinking the buffet is going to be the only buffets that I've seen. This is problematic in the sense that, my daughter's getting married in April, so I'm hopeful that by
buffets
April,
will come back.
Buffets will
That's
be
gonna
back
save
because
you
it is
about
a lower cost option
$15 a plate
than a seated dinner. So it's going to be.
Oh, there's going to be a buffet at that wedding.
Yeah, it's gonna, there will be a buffet. I'll put the food out myself, and you can help yourself. But I know the places where I have been to a buffet, their people serve your food for you. We used to have in Georgia, it was called a Morrison's cafeteria. Do you know what a Morrison's?
No idea.
Piccadilly.
I've heard of Piccadilly.
All right, and that's
That's
place.
a grocery store, though, right?
It's sort of half buffet, but you don't get to touch and serve the food. You just point to what you want. There's a plexiglass or a glass wall, and there's people that serve you.
That's like Luby's.
Is that Luby's?
Yeah, right.
Unfortunately, I was not able to experience Luby's before it went away. I'm very upset about that.
Is it gone?
Luby's is gone. Wow. Yes, never to return.
That's crazy.
There's so much to grieve.
The other thing that is gone, or at least so karaoke.
Right.
Are you a big karaoke guy?
Not since I quit drinking.
Dancing.
Dancing with what was it?
It was dancing with other people.
With someone you don't know.
With a stranger or
Yeah.
someone, you get out on the dance floor and you
say, hey,
just
you
dance
want to
with a group
dance?
of people.
Yeah.
Blowing out birthday candles. Like having birthday party at all. Have you done a birthday party on Zoom? It's absolutely miserable.
Oh, it's like it's almost like depressing and depression inducing. It's like, how do you leave a party thinking, wow, that was even worse than when I went in?
But I will tell you something. And I'm not going to say who it was, and I'm not going to say when it was, because I don't want it traced back to this particular person. But I was playing golf with a member of the church who, while he was playing golf, was on the Zoom birthday call for his grandson.
Ooh.
Yeah. And so I'm thinking...
Well, I mean, but as a grandfather, you would think, wow, I could multitask this if I can play golf and sing happy birthday. Because,
well, on the good side, as I'm riding the golf cart, on the good side, you know, he can just put his picture or some logo or whatever up because he's not. Because, you know, honestly, it's to the kids, all the kids' friends, or what they really want to see, they're talking to. But then his daughter, the mother of the son having the birthday party, you know, says, hey, let's all go around and say what we love or what we really like about so-and-so, names withheld for, you know, their own protection. And so in the middle of, you know, this particular hole, he's like, I'm going to have to sit this hole out because I have to. And you can hear him over by the tree as I'm lining up a putt. He goes, you know what I really love about little Johnny? He's just always the sweetest. And I'm just so proud of you, son. And Pappy's here for you. And I love you. And this has been the best party ever. And then he puts it back on mute and he goes, what did I miss?
I would have wanted to kind of maybe put chips and balls over his area. That's funny.
The other thing we're going to miss that we don't have anymore, free samples.
Right. In the mall.
Yeah. Don't you remember, like, at the food court, the best was always either the Chick-fil-A chicken nuggets on a toothpick?
Yeah.
Or the Chinese.
I was going to say that Asian place.
The Hunan.
Whatever it was.
Whatever. And the sweet and sour chicken. There was always, like, some kind of dish.
And the froyo. You get a froyo thing? You go buy those sometimes?
No, you'd have to ask for that where I'm from. Huh. But I will just tell you, when you're hungry and you're walking in a mall, I wouldn't pick Chinese in a mall kiosk like ever.
Yeah.
Like I'd have to be in really bad shape. But man, when you taste that, you're like, you know, I'll consider this. At this point.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm okay. I think I'll consider this.
Yeah. I remember being it must have been junior high, going to the mall when they had those things, and I would lap that place a number of times. Be walking around with your friends, you get a little hungry. I wouldn't even change my shirt. I just go in the reverse order. And most of those folks that are handing those things out, at least my experience when I was a kid, was like they were a couple years older than I was, you know, and it wasn't like they were corporate protectors.
Right.
They were just ready to go load back up.
Now, this is not something that we as guys hadn't experienced, but I remember as a kid there used to be like the makeup counter, and you could go and you could try the lipstick or the makeup. They don't do that anymore, I would assume.
I would assume not.
I would think
they might not have done that for a long time.
I don't know, John.
The other thing you don't see a lot of used anymore is cash.
Right.
Everything is like cashless.
Right.
Or encouraged to be cashless. So we ordered pizza.
Yeah.
And they leave it on your front door. They won't take your money. They won't touch you. They won't be within 6 feet of you.
Can you leave them a tip?
You can on the card. You set it up online when you do it.
Yeah.
And then the last thing, there's one is like, do you remember when you used to take your kid to the little, like the pizza joint or whatever, and they would get in the ball pits? Remember the ball pit?
Those things should have never existed in the first place, bro.
I never liked those.
I mean, that's where mumps started. The Black Plague came out of one of those pits.
Did they really? Like
yeah, and the AIDS virus all started at a ball pit.
Have you ever been to a Chuck E. Cheese?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. I didn't know if they had them in Texas.
Oh, my goodness.
They had Chuck E. Cheese everywhere?
Oh.
So Chuck E. Cheese, you go, of course, you're sitting in there. Pizza's horrible.
Oh, horrible.
And they have these little whack-a-mole games. They always have the ball pits for the kids. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember who it was. One of them was having a birthday. My mother is like the most Purell, like even before COVID. everything, it's like Purell everything, right? And all I'm thinking of is watching my daughter get in Purell before you get in the ball pit. Come out and Purell. Go in and Purell. Go in. My mother's like head was going to explode because of the ball
spray it
pit.
off.
And I'm thinking, yeah, this is funny. This vicious loop that sort of kicked in with the ball pit was pretty entertaining on my behalf, because there's no way you can sanitize your life enough.
No.
And then, do you ever ask a stranger to take a picture of you while you're out?
It's happened, yeah.
Would you do it now?
Yeah.
You would?
Yeah, I think so.
So you'd hand your phone to someone that you don't know, who will now touch your phone to take a picture.
How would you say it like that? You're making me feel bad. No, I would not do it, John. Sorry. I've come correct. You know, we were out the other day, and somebody asked Michelle to take a picture, and she took the picture and then texted it to the person.
Okay, that's safe.
But then I was like, now you've got this random person's number, so we can. Anyway.
We were on the top of the one of those mountains in Colorado, and there were other people around. He'd taken the little, I don't know what you call that, the bucket, the sky lift.
Okay.
The gondola. Yeah, thank you for the Italian lesson. So taking the gondola up to the top of the mountain. And, of course, there's people looking around. The view's great. And I'm taking a selfie. And this guy walks up. He goes, "Well, let me take a picture of you." And I'm like, "No, I wouldn't." I mean, I felt at first I was like, "Well, that makes perfect sense." And he's like, "Yeah, okay, fine." And I was just, I think, rude to this guy.
You're like, hey, pal, those
But
days are over.
I didn't mean to be. I was just
those
like,
days are over. Back it up.
I said, first, back up 6 feet. And second, where's your mask? Third, no, I'm not letting you touch my phone that I put up to my face. That made perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
That did not seem like insulting at all. But apparently it is. It's gone. Those are the things that we have no more. So there's, I thought one of the things, we talk about some of that, some current events that are going on. We have some questions for each other. Kind of like remember back when we started this podcast?
16 years ago.
Do little things like this that were enjoyable for us and probably for no one else. But I also thought we'd talk a little bit about boredom and loneliness, which are things that, been preaching on, we've been talking about. And I think the thing that stands out to me is really on the one on boredom, Jeff. The thing that stood out to me is, there have been a lot of sociologists and psychologists that have said that, boredom that we deal with. When I say boredom, I don't just mean I have nothing to do. I mean almost this, like the Desert Fathers called it acedia, which was this listlessness. It's like you have no passion, no energy. You have growing apathy because there's just this routine, this monotony about life and existence, right? So that's what I mean by boredom. Boredom is that when you disengage from life, you despise the humdrum daily routine. You become more and more disinterested in things, less and less engaged in things. And that dissatisfaction leads you to have a loss of concern for the things that are going on in life, for other people, for yourself. And you become very quickly someone who's apathetic. Mm-hmm. I have experienced this.
Yes.
Apathy.
How so?
It's not, we're really busy. We're doing all sorts of things.
Yes.
I mean, every day it's like just the waterfall of things to be done and activities. It's not like we're just sitting around doing nothing. It's not that. It's like you have all your normal things in your life, stressors, that now all the other people in your life are dealing with the same ramped up, escalated anxiety, right? But yet you don't have your same resources in place. You don't have the same distractions. You don't have the same ability to go out to the movie theater, or to go out to the restaurants, or to go out and hang out with friends. All those things are not there. And so what sociologists and psychologists have been saying, that this boredom or this listlessness that we have in our lives, this is not just because of the pandemic. This was something that we had at work in our culture. We were bored as a culture before this. But what happened was we found a lot of stimulants or distractions to mask the boredom in our lives, or the listlessness in our lives. And so we were addicted to entertainment. We were addicted to drugs or alcohol or work or shopping or overeating to try to take our minds off of that lack of energy or passion about life. And I just think that's really interesting. So what they say is the main problem during the pandemic was not the sudden onset of boredom, but that so many of the distractions that we normally had to appease our boredom are now suddenly removed from us. Yeah. You can no longer go to a movie. Can't go to an Astros game. You can't go watch the Rockets play the Lakers in the playoffs. You can't go to a concert when you need a jolt of entertainment. You can't go to that restaurant that you used to go and sit at the bar or at the table and you'd run into people that you see. Now we're just stuck with our rice and our beans and our cans of tuna from the pantry. And, you know, binge watching some show on Netflix that I've already seen, that I saw last year or the year before, and now I'm like, I got nothing.
Yeah. 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 I see that with my kids too, and also just there's so much digital content that becomes this onslaught of a way of anesthetizing ourselves, and so the goal is to be entertained, you know. And I think there's something about boredom that echoes this rumbling of a hungry soul. And we don't know what to do with that hungry soul. And so there is this onslaught of ways of being entertained, from Candy Crush on to whatever, you know, to Netflix. And I found myself even wanting to read more, but having the capacity to do it less in the last couple months for some reason, knowing that the antidote for me many times of my boredom is to go out and take a walk, to get active and busy, and then for my mind to read something. And I've got a list of books on the side where I read, and I look at them and I can't muster it.
Do you think that's apathy, or?
That's a good question.
I don't know. I mean, I do think there is a sense of apathy at work in my life about some things. The ability to empathize, and to care like you normally would, the capacity doesn't seem to be as much as before. And I'm sure that's not true for everybody, but I find it's like, okay, I want to be done with this situation. And I think the human empathy is one of the big issues you see with, especially Christians, in this world of deeply divided politics and racial divisions and, you know, all of these things that are going on, fighting over masking and COVID. If you think about it, what we're missing is empathy for each other.
Yeah.
Because you can disagree. You can say, I don't agree with you on this.
That's right.
But there's no empathy for the other side.
Another space to kind of feel with the other. Yeah, that's right. That's right. And as has been noted, there is this kind of deep sense of indifference that comes up. And I wonder if that's a protection, if apathy is, like, what is apathy protecting? What is it protecting inside of us, or what is it pointing to that is needing more attention for us?
What's the answer?
That was my question to you, John.
No. Well, I think it is. I love that. I know we talk with Jerry Weber a lot and work with him on a weekly basis, helping think through some things. And, you know, as he says here on, my wife asked me last week, she goes, what are y'all looking at? Because she watches the podcast on YouTube. She's like, what are y'all looking at? And I was like, well, there's a big TV over there. And it has like stuff on it that we look at. So she feels left out because she doesn't get to see the TV. I said, well, just listen to it on the podcast and don't watch the YouTube channel and you won't know. So persons often respond to boredom, or I would say the acedia, the listlessness, this place that we find ourselves of just, distraction, but unsettledness, by withdrawing into a state of empathy. And when someone perceives that life has deflated into daily tedium, into deadening monotony, that person often grows increasingly disinterested, enthusiasm and excitement wane, and the person feels disconnected. I can't tell you how many people that I have talked to that are young, with families, who tell me how disconnected they feel. And so we're starting worship services back on September the 20th.
Right.
And I don't think that's going to be the only thing that reconnects people, but I know a lot of people are excited about at least that happening, where they feel like they can just be in another room with someone that they used to be in the room with, to look across the room with a mask on, it gives them some sense of connectedness.
Right. Right. Absolutely. And I think also one of the things that is that if I'm being entertained and my desire is to be entertained, there's a sense in which my what kind of Jerry kind of makes that connection between that and interests. How do I kind of develop interests? What are the interests that I have, right? And there's more time that we have on our hands. One of the things that Michelle and I started doing is we signed up for a guitar lessons online. Bought some guitar, and so we're learning how to play and I played guitar for forever, but I never really learned formally. And so we thought, what if we were to do this for the next couple weeks together and just see where it goes? And that's really helped my brain to learn something new, to have something, and trying to get even my boys to engage outside of their own devices, outside of their own school. At this time has been really hard, to let's go learn something, let's go do something, and there is almost a listlessness that's like a weight that holds us back in this time. And I wonder if it's connected to grief at all, or what part of that's connected to grief.
I think it's all connected. But you're my hero. You're taking guitar lessons with your wife.
I mean, we signed up for them and we're doing it. But I mean,
That's
why don't y'all come over and we'll play guitar together, John?
That's so good.
I mean,
It's really good.
It's not. I mean,
The other thing, a boredom or acedia, which is the ancient word for this listlessness, comes from exhaustion around this chronic tiredness. And I think that can be physical in a lot of situations.
Yeah.
But typically when I would teach about this particular thing, it would be in the midst of people who can overwork themselves, or workaholics, can deal with acedia or boredom
Yes.
or listlessness.
Yes.
And that's the outlet is the workaholism. It's
Interesting.
covering and masking a real sense of boredom and chronic tiredness in their lives. And so, Evagrius, who's one of the guys that writes about it, says a mother and a father of a toddler may not be able to leave town until the baby is older. They have to tough it out. On the other hand, they may not have taken their need for breaks from the baby seriously enough to do something about it. And if the need for leisure is the source of the problem, many people aggravate their listlessness by filling their spare time with more and more activities that do not give rest. I've found that, even though I might have more time, say, to do things that I haven't done before, it's not really helping me deal with the underlying issue because it's an escape mechanism.
yeah.
So if I play golf now twice a week instead of once a week, or even some weeks 3,
Yeah.
Somebody told me, it's like, I know why you don't want church to start back, because you just want to play golf on Sunday. And so I've learned a long time ago that preachers don't do well playing golf on Sunday. I never play well on Sunday. There's just a divine retribution thing involved. So
I also wonder if part of the invitation is because how do you pronounce that word?
acedia?
Acedia. It sounds like that what Jerry's saying is that there's a real desire to either fantasize into the future of what the future could be, or to ruminate on the past about how good it was. And I'm finding that, like, mindfulness meditation, the practice that I've been trying to do for the last 5 or 6 years, has been really helpful to me to be in the present moment, to identify what's going on in the present moment, to understand divine presence, the divine presence of God in this moment, and allows me then to identify, recognize, and allow those feelings, identify them, and then to begin to spiritually hold them in a place where the Spirit can begin to work on them. Because if I don't do that, I end up shoving those things down, and they live in the basement of my life, and they come out sideways in weird ways, or I do it. I get busy, And I think it was, I've said this before, but the human beings are the only mammals or animals that when they're lost increase their speed.
Yeah.
And so there's a sense that when I feel lost and I don't know what to do, I do more to cover up that sense of what do I do, right? And so I think
this is why when you find yourself in this place where we all do, the global pandemic, look at how leaders lead through it. Look at how we deal with it. We want to go back either the way things were, or we want to be on the other side of this.
Yes.
We don't know how to do the in-between.
Yeah.
We don't know how to live in the wilderness very well.
No.
We're not. Well, neither did the Hebrews. So, I mean, I'm not going to grade us too hard. Took them 40 years. It's not going to take us 40 years.
I want to go glamping in the wilderness.
But, I mean, this is the time when I think Christians, and we've talked about this a lot, like, let's get away from the partisan politics. Let's get away from these issues. There are real issues, there are real things going on. Why are we becoming more angry towards each other? Why are we becoming more enraged? Why are we becoming more dissatisfied? Why are we becoming those things? We should, this is the wilderness. This is where we rely on the manna and the quail that God provide. This is the time the Christian should flourish. We know how to do this, but we don't, because I think we've been way more influenced by cultural forces as Americans. And don't get me wrong, I'm proud to be an American, right? And I love my country. But the culture that we live in, this culture of wish fulfillment, immediate granting of everything that we want, of my opinion, is right. We're not a compliant culture. One of the things you look at other cultures around the world, like in Europe or in Asia, the culture is more compliant. And so when they say wear a mask, everybody wears a mask. When they say stay distance, everybody stays distance. When they say whereas we, Americans, we got to say, don't you tell me what I got to wear a mask, where I got to do,
Right.
And you see people on these videos who are like fighting people in grocery stores because they ask them to put a mask on, throwing things, enraged.
Yeah.
That's just, it amazes me. And I think that's where we need to do the work in this wilderness period we find ourselves, to deal with it. It's hard to deal with your stuff.
Absolutely. It is hard to deal with your stuff. And there comes a point where I can project it all outward until that doesn't work. And I have to look at, I have to get in front of the mirror and say, like Isaiah, I am a man of unclean lips. This is my issue. This is my problem. What do I do? And begin to take responsibility for that. And I think you're right, John. I think the church right now has a chance in the coming months, particularly, and the coming years, to regain a deep sense of prophetic attunement with what the culture needs, right? To say, we can live differently. There's a different imagination by which we can treat each other. We can be a place where we're calling people into the passage of grief and boredom and loneliness or whatever, depression, into that life that God calls us to. But we have to go through that.
Yeah.
We can't bypass that. The only way around it is through it,
Yeah, and you don't get to pick the pace.
No.
That's the hard part about living in the wilderness.
That's right.
And why an entire generation of Hebrews had to pass.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
God knew, you're not going to get this. It's going to take a new mindset, a new way of being. And it's the same for us. We're not going to have a whole generation removed, but that may be to our detriment.
Yes.
But I do think that our children who are watching and coming through this will be very different than we will be, or we are as we go through this.
Yeah.
And I remember last week we were talking about, not here, but in the sermon I preached, is that, a couple of things that we can do to deal with the loneliness and the boredom and the frustration and this just general sense of unease in our lives is, first, change the way you see the situation. Work to see things with new eyes. Work to see things through God's eyes. And when I think about that story of Elijah running away from Ahab and Jezebel in 1 Kings 19, and he's all out there by himself, and he's having the pity party, and he's feeling bad, and the angel of the Lord comes to him twice. God speaks to him. God directs him to a special place where then God comes and visits with him. All this happens in the desert, in the place with no resource, right? But although it's not something that you and I would typically see, there's proof. God will speak to us. God will provide resource.
Yes.
But we got to be able to see it. And if we're so consumed with all these other things that enrage us, we're not going to be able to see the ways that God is at work in our hearts and our lives.
That's right. I was thinking about loneliness as you and I were kind of preparing, at least to talk about this a bit. And the former Surgeon General talked about this a few years ago when he suggested that loneliness had become an epidemic in our country, and that he began on this kind of listening tour of America. In fact, he wrote a book on it called Together, I think. But he began to realize that folks that were dealing with drug addiction or diabetes and all these kind of things, as he was listening to people, also were dealing with this profound sense of loneliness that was accompanied by shame. Like, I shouldn't feel lonely, right? I should be better than this. And I talked to my my spiritual director about this a few months ago, or a month or so ago, and she said something really interesting to me, that there's a spiritual journey through loneliness that she says it starts in loneliness, and then it moves to aloneness, but that is also to break us into oneness. We have to go through that. That once we feel like, oh, I feel lonely, there's something wrong, I got to push it away. That it really is an invitation into recognizing that our heart's desire belongs in God, and that if we try to get out of it through whatever means of trying to get out of it, that there's a spiritual invitation to that, to move into a place that we move to where we're one with God, we're one with the Spirit, and I find that to be interesting, because I don't know about you, but once I feel super lonely, I'm like, get me out of here. What do I got to do to not feel this way?
A distraction.
Yeah, and I'm back into distraction.
Well, solitude is an ancient spiritual Christian tradition.
That's right.
But solitude, learning to be alone in the presence of God, to find your being in God,
yes,
is very different than loneliness.
Yeah.
There's a disconnected. It's almost like a lament. A lament is not just a complaining, but it's a complaining to God. It's a prayer.
Yeah.
It's prayer.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
And so lament is an appropriate way to pray. It's just that you got to take it to God in prayer. You
Right.
can say, hey, why the hell is this happening?
Right.
I am not enjoying this. This is miserable.
Right.
But it's taken to God.
Yeah.
Where instead of just turning and cynically just talking about how horrible things are.
Right.
You talked about, I think too, in loneliness, you mentioned this a while back, and I think Jerry referenced it, is that we use the wrong term. We talk about social distancing, how we change our gaze towards our relationships, but really it's physical distancing. We should not be socially disconnected.
Yes.
We should not be socially isolated.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to find creative ways to do it.
Yeah.
But I think the social distancing terminology is detrimental.
I do too. We're finding, I found this, particularly when the quarantine started, like it was the small interactions that really I missed the most, because in some ways, like the dudes that I'm really tight with in my small group or something like that, we're going to figure out how to do that. We're going to figure out how to see each other, even if it's walking around the park or playing golf or whatever. We're going to do that. It was these smaller interactions at that level that I was really missing socially. Folks that I would run into normally at a gym or at a grocery store that I go to a lot. Whatever. You have these kind of ways of being with people that that really kind of began to signal to me, this is there is an isolation, and I have to work now hard at not being isolated, but really pushing against that and really developing strategies around that, I think. So,
I think you have to be intentional too.
Yeah.
It's like we do.
Yeah.
A group of my friends who are preachers in Georgia, we do now. We've actually been more connected through this than ever.
Really?
We do this little zappy hour, which is a Zoom happy hour.
Yeah.
And it's fun. I mean, to catch up, and we do it more often now. I used to would only see them twice a year, and we talk on the phone. Well, now at least once a week or once every other week, we do Zappy Hour.
Yeah.
It's good
That's
to see their
great.
faces,
That's
laugh
great.
with each other, and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff.
That's great. Yeah.
So what do we have on current events? What's going on in the world? What's going on in the world? So HISD is one of the largest school districts in the country, I think.
In the
right?
world.
And they,
Sure,
in the
okay.
world, and they decided to go virtual only starting September 8th, which is today as we're recording this, and their website crashed. Oh, 504 error. Yeah, 504 error. I don't know what that means, but it is the most common error on the internet. The 504 error.
That is modern speak for abandon hope, all ye who enter.
Yeah, sorry, dude.
That's
504
the gates
error.
of hell right there.
Yeah, 504 error is the apocalypse on the internet. I don't know what that means, but I feel for, I really feel for the teachers
Yeah.
and the parents and the kids and the administrators and the community. I mean, everybody. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just so hard to imagine how difficult it is for us to try to engage in an entirely new way of educating our children when
Yes.
they can't be present in the classroom.
Yeah.
That's just not a small undertaking.
It's rough. It's rough. I've got to tell you though, I've been super impressed with SBISD with Spring Branch, and my 3 kids are involved in the system here, and just the way that they have both kind of set some kind of big goals about getting kids back, but also being really open to pivot and try new things. And so for the last week, my kids have been online. This is the first week they're going back to in-person learning, but they'll do that 2 days a week, and then based on their last name. And I just think it's really been good. There's some hope there, some hope that my children will not be in my house next week.
This actually answers this actually may answer a real serious question that I had this morning. That we were doing a Zoom finance committee meeting
Right.
at 7:30,
All right.
and about 8:20 hour into the meeting, like half the committee, including myself, got kicked out of the Zoom.
bet you're right.
And couldn't get back in. I thought it was because my internet went down.
That's because HISD was opening
It was
today.
HISD.
And every
Or it
other
was just
ISD.
Zoom. Can you imagine? I mean, if every classroom in the United States is on Zoom, that's got to be like problematic for Zoom. Well, anyway, I hope to get kicked off many more meetings on Zoom
That's right.
in the coming days. But
Yeah, but it's like,
what's the story
This
here?
one
Drew?
started because of a gender reveal where someone shot an explosive and then it got out of hand. And this is the second time this has happened in California.
You mean this is the second time that a gender reveal
Yes, that's
has
correct.
started a fire? What do you think about gender reveals, by the way, since we're on this?
You're going to throw me under the bus.
I mean, the wildfires are tragic, and they do enormous damage, and they're very hard to control.
Yeah. I say keep your gender reveal inside. I just think like this week there's still like we keep saying there's a lot going on. There's a lot to hold, a lot to grieve, a lot to pray. I think that's why spiritual practices, what we're talking about in terms of our orientation towards God's divine presence, we have to keep doing that collectively. It's not going to get easier. It's not going to get easier. But also, we're here, and the resources we have are going to not only help us get through the desert, they're going to reveal things to us in the midst of the desert that only the desert can reveal. Right?
The desert can lead us to creativity.
Yep.
The desert
Come
can
on.
lead us to opportunity.
Yep.
The desert invites us into new ways of living life.
Yep.
This is where we find ourselves, and this is how you find life in the desert.
That's right.
It's not just a place for loneliness. And so I go back to that 1 Kings 19. Elijah felt alone and
Yes.
abandoned.
Yes.
And yet it was in that space and place that God gave him new purpose, new
That's right.
vocation, new calling to go anoint 2 new kings and a new prophet
That's
that
right.
would follow him, even though nothing had changed.
Yeah.
Ahab and Jezebel are still after him.
Yep.
He's still in the desert.
Yep.
Nothing around him in the world had changed, but now he has new energy and passion. And I think that's what is available for all of us
That's right.
if we will.
Amen. And you know what? I don't trust folks that haven't been through the desert. We can't narrate a time. Does that make sense? That folks whose like narrative is always left to right and up, and it's just every day with Jesus is sweeter than the day before kind of stuff. I don't trust that.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't seem to be human to me. Folks that have spent time in the desert where it feels stripped down, they can't hear God's voice. They're wondering where God is. There's something about that that's absolutely necessary for our own human growth and spiritual depth and all those kinds of things.
One of the things I say a lot to people that is, you cannot lead anywhere. You cannot lead anyone anywhere that you have not been or you are not willing to go.
Oh. Yep.
And so if you're the kind of person that you want to teach your children, you want to teach your family, you want to be a model for others, if you haven't been to this place, none of us have been to this place, but we got to be willing to journey through this in the right way.
Amen.
And only then, I think, can we be the husbands and wives and mothers and fathers that we need to be. I think too many people are avoiding what is potentially transformative in this season, and they're going to lose a lot because of that.
That's right.
I'm John Stevens.
I'm Matt Russell.
And this is Pod Have Mercy.